Hey guys, Jeff here, and it is time for another Plarn craft video. So, a while back, my kids are going through their toys. I saw they had one of these peg looms, often used with loops of cloth that are stretched across and kind of woven around, and you make pot holders. And I was wondering if I could do something like that with Plarn. Now, obviously, Plarn isn't going to work for a pot holder. It's not absorbent at all. And I always want to make a craft that is useful. So I realized I liked this idea, but this size, this shape just wasn't going to work for me. So I went out to my garage, found a piece of wood, and divided it out so I could put nails evenly around it. Now, something to note. I had originally hoped to do the bias weave, which if you've ever seen any videos about this, it's where you start at a corner and you're going around, everything's on a diagonal. I made a mistake though. To do the bias weave, you either need a square with corner pins, which this doesn't have either, or you need the long sides to be exactly twice as long as the short sides. That did not work out on this. I did not plan it quite that well. So instead, I decided just to do a basic weave on this. What that means is I set it up where I started at a nail and I went around that one and then I come down here. And so I'm going back and forth so you get a double strand effect. Just to show a quick setup. Come here. Now, one of the difficulties with Plarn is that this double strand effect, since the Plarn already has 2 strands, now means that you have 4 strands that you're having to manage. So go around that nail, come down here around the same nail, then go to the next one. And so I warped it up like this. Now, one of the things to note is down here, to make sure I had 2 strands going around this nail, I went back around it on the other side. And I continued like this, so I got all the way to the corner. Once I got to the corner, I came down here, and I would go across with a loop like this, going over and under each set. So again, both of these are going over and under. Once I came back, I went to the next nail, and again, I would go over and under. This time, anytime this one went over, this one went under, and vice versa. So I did that with my original mat, so I got to the end, and then to finish it off, let's just go ahead and pull it out here. To finish it off, I crocheted around it, as I watched one video on peg looms do, because you need to make sure that the loops aren't going to pull back into the weaving when you're done. So you crochet in around. So this was the first mat that I tried, and I tried to do some color work with it because, I mean, there's some fun colors in plastic grocery bags, and I liked the color work here. But using my standard strands, don't know if you can tell, but it's so soft, so insubstantial. I really wasn't crazy about it. Additionally, the crocheted border for me, it just didn't work, especially around the corners, but just in general, you can see that the crocheted border is trying to pull in on the whole mat. You've got parts that are just sticking out, and I wasn't crazy about it. So what I did is, when I realized standard Plarn is too insubstantial, I made beefy Plarn. So when I'm making my Plarn, the standard, this is about how wide a loop normally is. But I said, what if I made it thicker? You can see this is almost a little more than twice as thick. This, I get like 8 of them, give or take, out of a regular grocery bag. This, at most, I got 4. But by making it thicker, it meant that I would have a little more body in the work as I was weaving it. So this is what I ended up with. I don't know if you can already tell, but when you compare them, this one, it's floppy, it's fabric. This guy feels more substantial. I told my wife when I finished it, I had her try it. I said, it makes me think of those like grass mats that you see with like Chinese, Japanese decorations sometimes, just how it has some real body to it. So this one I did just in gray because I didn't want to commit to making tons of the beefy Plarn if I wasn't going to like it, and I didn't want to mess around with it, and I just did the gray bags because I've got plenty of those. So again, once I had a bunch of this cut up, I warped my loom there back and forth, exact same technique. It's just now I was using yarn that was thicker. Now, because I wasn't as prepared as I should have been, as I was doing the weaving, I did a lot of the weaving with this N, or 9.00 millimeter crochet hook. And yeah, it really made it handy. And I will cut to some footage of actually showing the weaving. But it made it really handy to pull those strands through the ones that you're weaving, instead of trying to pull your fingers under. Because I found when I was pulling my fingers under, I was popping the loops off of the nails. But with this, I could grab what I needed and pull it through to the other side. Now, one thing to make sure of is as you're pulling through, make sure that you catch every warp correctly. Again, always checking the row before, but then also make sure you're squishing it down towards the side you worked on to make sure you keep everything nice and compact. So, in addition to being beefier, as I said, I also changed how I finished this one. After I got to the tail end down here, since Plarn is the loops, I was actually able to just tie it off kind of short and then fasten on my standard Plarn. I forgot a step before we get there. As you're going down in your weaving, when you get near the end, it's going to be a lot harder to actually fit your hook through. So here you get to see some footage of how I found that a needle actually allowed me to pass underneath my warp, go past the nail to make sure that I have some space to pull it out, but then just come back in the weaving. By sewing it through, it allowed me to make it more accurate, less likely to pull things off the nails again as things got tight. But again, make sure after you go down, if you started on one side, as you come back, make sure you're matching on your way back, because it's only it's the best way to say this. Only change your over and under when you're going in your first direction. So since I think, you see, I went from, I can't remember the video that's going over this, but as I went one direction, I think maybe going to the right, I went one way. So as I go left, I make sure I'm matching that one. It's only when I go to the right again that I'm going to shift how things are going underneath. Now to the finishing. On this one, when I got to the corner and I tied off and I fastened on my standard Plarn to that, and decided, since I didn't like the crochet finish, I was going to do a sewed finish. Again, got some footage for you so you can see how I was doing it, but the big point is that we're sewing through the loops that are on the nail, and we're doing that to give something to hold onto so it doesn't get pulled back in. What I'm doing here in this clip is, I believe, more or less a blanket stitch, because I felt like that would just give a little bit more stability and a nicer edge here. But I liked it. It seemed easy enough to do. It was definitely easier to use the needle than it was to use the crochet hook. And I just feel like it gives a nicer appearance. So, takeaways. Got to make sure you're being careful with this. Keep your, kind of how you pack things, as consistent as possible. You can see here that this was actually my first row, and it's super loose. I've actually done a lot of kind of adjusting on things to try to make it a little bit better. But I mean, overall, I like it. I feel like Don't know if my wife would let me, but I feel like it could work as a placemat or as a mat for anything that you want to protect a surface from. You know, if I'm working with some pieces of metal or anything like that and I don't want to scratch up a table or whatnot, I can put this down. I saved it all from the trash, just spent my time on it. It'll work for that. But again, you could do some decorative work. Do some things with different colors and stripes and whatnot. Again, this one's probably not going to see any use, but I'm probably going to keep it just because I like the way it looks. It reminds me that I could play with colors if I go and try this again. Also, since my loom doesn't have the opening there, you really have to be careful, because I left out that in my first one here, there are places where I did not catch all of the pieces when I was weaving. So you can see right here, that is the difficulty with Plarn. There's another one there, because you have so many pieces. Since Plarn itself is made up of loops, you've got 2 strands in a single strand of Plarn. So when you've got it doubled up, you actually have 4 strands here, essentially, that you have to make sure to get underneath all of them or over all of them. And it's really easy, if you're not careful, to get underneath like 3 of them, but actually split one side over here, which is exactly what happened repeatedly down here. So definitely a benefit to making this hollow, because you can actually check the back of your work. But overall, I am pleased. I will probably do this again in the future just to try some other colors and some other designs. But I wanted to share that with you. Something new to try with Plarn. Weaving. Why not? If you try this out, please let me know in the comments down below. If you have any questions about this, let me know. I'm always wanting to help, because I hope that some of this is inspiring you all out there to see what you can do to craft with plastic bags. And with that, I'll talk to you all later.